6 days after my wedding, my family demanded I cancel my $11,840 honeymoon to Japan to pay my sister's $31,800 debt. Then I discovered she had stolen my identity, forged my signature, and my parents had helped her do it because they thought I'd stay quiet to save their house. 6 days after my wedding, my parents sat in my living room and told me to cancel my honeymoon. My sister owed $31,800, a lender was threatening court, and the refund from our trip to Japan would almost cover it. My mother called the timing unfortunate. My father called it a test of family loyalty. My sister sat on my sofa wearing the $900 dress she had bought for my wedding and never once explained how the debt happened. I refused. The next morning, someone called our travel company pretending to be me and tried to cancel the flights anyway. That attempt failed, but it exposed something worse. The lender believed I had co-signed part of my sister's debt. I had never seen the loan. So why did the application contain my social security number, my old address, and a digital signature copied from my wedding contract? And why were my parents more frightened of the police than they were of losing their house? My name is Rachel. I was 31 when I married my husband, Ben. My younger sister, Kayla, was 27. Our family had spent years describing Kayla as unlucky and me as secure, as though those were permanent personality traits instead of the results of repeated choices. I worked as an operations analyst for a medical supply company. Ben was a public school teacher. We were comfortable, not wealthy. We planned our wedding for 18 months and paid for it ourselves. The final cost was $18,600, and we saved another $11,840 for a 12-day honeymoon in Japan. That trip mattered to us. Ben's father was born in Osaka and died when Ben was 19. Ben had never visited the neighborhood where his father grew up. We planned to meet a cousin, visit the family temple, and spend 3 days in Kyoto. It was not simply a luxury vacation we could replace with a weekend at the beach. Kayla worked in social media marketing when she worked at all. She had been laid off twice, left one job because her manager was controlling, and quit another to launch an online wellness brand. My parents covered her rent during every transition. I had helped too. At 25, I paid $2,700 to keep her car from being repossessed. At 28, I covered a $1,200 dental bill. The year before my wedding, I lent her $4,000 for what she described as a certification program. She repaid $600, then stopped mentioning it. Whenever I asked about repayment, my mother said, "Kayla needs encouragement, not another creditor." I eventually told the family I would no longer lend money without a written agreement. They treated that boundary as evidence that Ben was making me cold. The boundary started after Kayla's certification loan. She had told me the program would qualify her to manage advertising accounts for health clinics. I transferred $4,000 directly to what she said was the program administrator. Months later, I learned the recipient was a friend who ran weekend influencer retreats. The certification was a 2-day seminar in a rented mansion, followed by professional photographs beside a swimming pool. When I asked Kayla why she had misrepresented it, she said the retreat included networking and that I would not have understood the opportunity. My mother told me results mattered more than labels. There were no results. Kayla used the photographs for 6 months to imply that the mansion was her company's headquarters. Ben never told me to cut her off. He helped me write a simple repayment agreement offering $100 monthly payments with no interest. Kayla signed it, paid 6 months, then claimed the agreement was emotionally abusive. My parents agreed with her. That history was why Ben and I kept the honeymoon account at a bank my family did not use. We also declined my parents' offer to contribute $5,000 to the wedding because the offer came with demands about guests, music, and Kayla's role. My mother later told relatives she had paid for the reception anyway. I corrected the claim once, then stopped chasing every version of the story. During wedding planning, Kayla repeatedly asked what our trip cost. I gave vague answers. She joked that only rich people spent 2 weeks in Japan, even though the trip cost less than the SUV she leased and returned after 8 months. A week before the wedding, I caught her photographing our printed itinerary. She said she wanted the hotel names in case of an emergency. That detail came back to me when Melissa described the cancellation call. Kayla had not guessed the booking number. She had prepared access before we were married. Kayla was one of my bridesmaids. 2 months before the wedding, she told me her credit card had been frozen because of suspected fraud. She asked to use my card for her dress and promised to transfer the money that evening. I declined and paid the boutique directly only after she sent $400 toward the cost. She covered the remaining $500 3 weeks later. At the time, I thought I had protected myself. I did not realize she had photographed the first page of our wedding venue contract while helping me assemble invitation boxes. That page contained my full legal name, old billing address, phone number, and a version of my signature. Our wedding was small and happy. Kayla gave a speech about how I had always rescued her, which guests interpreted as affectionate. She said, "Rachel has never let me fall, even when I made it difficult." My mother cried. I remember feeling uneasy at the word never, but I dismissed it. 6 days later, my parents asked to visit. They arrived with Kayla and a manila folder. My father placed a demand letter on the coffee table. It came from North Star Recovery and listed a balance of $31,842. Payment or a response was due within 10 days. My mother said, "We need to solve this before it becomes public." I asked what Kayla had purchased. Kayla said it was a combination of business expenses, medical bills, and interest. She would not provide statements. My father had calculated that canceling our flights, hotels, rail passes, and tours might return about $10,000. He and my mother could contribute $8,000. They expected Ben and me to cover the remaining amount through savings or a personal loan. Ben asked, "Why would Rachel and I borrow money to pay a debt Kayla will not explain?" My mother replied, "Because married couples help family when they can. You can take another trip later." Ben told her the trip included visiting his father's family. My mother said she understood it was sentimental, but insisted living people had to come before memories. That was the moment my sympathy disappeared. Ben remained calm, but I saw his jaw tighten. I told them we would not cancel the honeymoon or pay the debt. I offered to help Kayla find a nonprofit credit counselor and review the statements. Kayla said there was no time for lectures. My father leaned forward and said, "You have nearly $60,000 in that house account. Do not pretend you cannot afford this." He meant the savings Ben and I were building for a down payment. I had never told Kayla the balance. My mother admitted she saw it on a bank pre-qualification letter while helping me move boxes before the wedding. I asked all 3 of them to leave. My mother stood in the doorway and said, "If Kayla loses everything because you chose a vacation, you will have to live with that." I answered, "Kayla chose the debt. I chose the honeymoon. Those are separate decisions." At 8:12 the next morning, our travel advisor Melissa called me. Someone had contacted the agency claiming my passport was damaged and requested full cancellation. The caller knew our booking number, dates, and the last 4 digits of my phone number. Melissa had become suspicious because the caller asked for refunds to be issued to a different card. She required the security phrase Ben and I had added after a previous airline schedule change. The caller guessed incorrectly twice and hung up. Only my parents and Kayla had received the itinerary. I changed every password, notified the airlines and hotels, and added verbal passcodes. Melissa preserved the call recording and account notes. I texted my family that any further attempt to access our travel reservations would be documented as fraud. My mother replied that I was being dramatic. Kayla did not respond. That afternoon, I called North Star Recovery, using the number on its public website rather than the demand letter. I intended only to tell them I was not involved. The representative asked for the reference number and then said there were 2 connected accounts. One was a $17,600 business line in Kayla's name. The other was a $14,200 personal loan listing Kayla as borrower and me as co-borrower. I said, "I did not apply for or sign any loan with Kayla." The representative transferred me to the fraud department. They asked whether I had lived at 914 Birch Street when the application was submitted. That was my old apartment, but I had moved 14 months earlier. The application used my social security number, date of birth, income, and employer. The stated income was close to my real salary. The lender froze collection on the disputed portion and told me to file an identity theft report, review my credit, and provide a signature affidavit. My hands felt cold, but my voice stayed steady enough to take notes. My credit report showed the loan and 2 recent hard inquiries I did not recognize. It also showed an online furniture account opened 3 weeks before my wedding with a $3,900 balance. The delivery address was my parents' house. Ben came home while I was printing the reports. He read them and said, "This is why they want us to pay quietly." The debt emergency was not about protecting Kayla from embarrassment. It was about preventing a lender from examining how my identity had entered the file. I filed reports with the identity theft portal and local police. I did not accuse a specific person beyond providing the records and travel cancellation attempt. I froze my credit and hired an attorney named Monica Reyes through my employer's legal plan. Monica sent notices to North Star, the original lender, the furniture retailer, and my family. She instructed my parents and Kayla to preserve phones, emails, loan records, and wedding documents. Monica also advised Ben and me to separate the practical emergency from the emotional one. We opened a new checking account for current bills, replaced debit cards, and changed the security questions on our utilities and insurance. We notified my employer because the fraudulent application named the company and listed a direct office number. My supervisor reviewed the access logs for the employee portal. Someone had attempted to reset my payroll password using my date of birth during the week of the wedding. The reset failed because it required an authenticator code. There was no evidence money had been redirected, but the attempt showed the intrusion was broader than one loan. I remembered my mother asking whether my wedding date would change my tax withholding. At the time, I assumed she was making conversation. Monica told me not to speculate beyond the evidence, but she added the payroll attempt to the report. My parents reacted as if each protective step were an attack. My father came to my office without an appointment and demanded that I sign a letter stating the loan dispute was a misunderstanding. Security stopped him in the lobby. He left an envelope containing a prepared affidavit. The affidavit said I had verbally authorized Kayla to use my credit temporarily and that Ben pressured me to deny it after our wedding. It also said I expected no repayment. My name was typed beneath a blank signature line. I gave it to Monica. She said, "They are asking you to solve one false document by signing another." My mother then contacted Ben's principal. She claimed Ben was involved in a private financial scheme and might be using school resources. Ben had warned the principal in advance, so the complaint was documented and dismissed. Still, he had to sit in an office explaining why his new mother-in-law was making accusations during the first week of his marriage. I apologized to him. Ben said, "You did not make that call. We are going to keep naming the person who did." That sentence became our rule. Whenever guilt blurred responsibility, we returned to the actual action and the person who chose it. Kayla called within 20 minutes. She said, "You reported me to the police over paperwork?" I replied, "I reported accounts opened with my identity. If you did not open them, you should want the same investigation." Kayla began crying and claimed a loan broker had filled out the application. She said she gave him my name only as a reference and did not know he had made me a co-borrower. Monica later explained that innocent references do not usually provide another person's social security number and copied signature. My father sent a message saying I had 48 hours to withdraw the report before he told the entire family I was trying to put Kayla in prison. I forwarded it to Monica. Then, my mother revealed the real leverage. She said my parents had guaranteed Kayla's business line with a second mortgage on their home. If North Star accelerated the debt, they could lose the house. They needed my honeymoon refund to reduce the balance and persuade the lender to extend the rest. I finally understood why they had arrived with exact calculations. They were not simply volunteering to help Kayla, they were already legally entangled. I asked why they had guaranteed a business they knew nothing about. My father replied, "She showed us contracts. We believed she was about to make real money. Monica obtained the loan file after I signed the fraud affidavit. The supposed business was called Bright Horizon Media. Kayla had used the business line to fund luxury short-term rentals, restaurant events, designer purchases, and a social media campaign presenting herself as a successful entrepreneur. The medical bills she mentioned totaled $640. The personal loan in my name had been used to cover minimum payments and buy furniture delivered to my parents' house. Kayla staged product shoots there, then returned some items for store credit she used personally. The lender's application log showed the form was submitted from my parents' home internet connection. A document labeled Rachel Approval was uploaded from Kayla's laptop. It was the signature page from my wedding contract, cropped and placed beneath the loan terms. The forensic review found that the signature page had been photographed at 3:18 p.m. on the day we assembled invitations. Kayla's phone metadata placed the image in a folder named Backup Options. In the same folder were photographs of my driver's license from the day I left my wallet on the kitchen counter, the bank pre-qualification letter showing our savings balance, and a pay statement my mother had taken from a moving box. There were also draft messages discussing how to approach me if the first loan was denied. One draft from Kayla to my mother said they could describe the money as a temporary family bridge after the wedding, when I would be too happy to create conflict. My mother's reply said the honeymoon deposit would make me feel committed, but refundable travel was still only money. They had planned the loyalty test before the debt became urgent. The demand letter in my living room had not surprised them. My parents had known for at least 5 weeks that Kayla was behind. They waited until after my wedding because they believed a newly married daughter would fear appearing selfish and would have a large refundable trip available. Monica warned me that the messages were painful but useful. They eliminated the family's claim that everyone had panicked spontaneously to prevent foreclosure. There was also an email from my mother's address to the broker. My mother wrote that I was traveling for work and had authorized the family to handle details. The broker responded that he still needed direct verification. 10 minutes later, an email address resembling mine sent approval. My mother had created that address. When Monica confronted her with the metadata, my mother admitted sending the email but insisted Kayla told her I had agreed. That claim made no sense because my mother had never asked me. The major twist was that Kayla had not acted entirely alone. My parents knew my name was being added to the loan. They may have avoided reading the final documents, but they helped create the appearance of my consent because the lender would not extend enough credit to Kayla otherwise. My father called it a temporary bridge. He said they planned to remove me after Kayla's business paid off the balance. I replied, "You used my identity as collateral and then asked me to cancel my honeymoon so no one would notice." My father said, "We made a bad decision to keep the family afloat. Filing charges is a worse decision." I ended the call. The family pressure became intense. My aunt sent messages saying my parents could become homeless. A cousin wrote that sisters should not involve police in money disputes. My grandmother asked whether I could at least delay the case until after the holidays. I created one factual summary approved by Monica. It stated that a loan and retail account had been opened using my personal information and a copied signature, that an investigation was underway, and that I would not pay or withdraw truthful reports. I sent it only to relatives who contacted me. Kayla responded publicly. She posted a long message claiming Ben had isolated me and that I was punishing her for looking more glamorous at my wedding. She included a photo of herself in the bridesmaid dress and wrote that jealousy could make people cruel. I did not reply online. Monica added the post to the file because it contradicted Kayla's earlier claim that a broker acted without her knowledge. 3 days before our flight, someone made another attempt to access the itinerary. This time, the caller knew the new departure time, but not the passcode. Melissa traced the number displayed in the booking log to my father's office line. My father claimed anyone could have used it. Ben asked whether I still wanted to travel. Part of me felt irresponsible leaving while lawyers and investigators worked. Monica told me nothing required my physical presence for the next 2 weeks and encouraged me not to reward coercion by abandoning our plans. We went. The night before departure, my grandmother called. She did not ask me for money. She asked whether I could forgive my parents enough to delay the police report. I explained that the report had already been filed and could not be treated like a reservation I controlled. My grandmother whispered, "Your mother says she could go to jail." I answered, "Then Mom is finally admitting she did something serious." My grandmother cried, and I cried after the call. Holding a boundary did not make me feel powerful. It made me feel like the only person in the family willing to let facts remain facts. At the airport, I expected some final disruption. Instead, check-in was ordinary. Our passports worked. Our bags were tagged. That normal sequence felt almost miraculous after a week in which every email could contain another theft. I turned off family notifications before takeoff. In Osaka, Ben met his father's cousin, Hiroshi, for the first time. Hiroshi showed us the narrow house where Ben's father had grown up and a box of school photographs. At the family temple, Ben placed incense for his father and cried quietly. I was grateful we had protected that day from people who had called it replaceable. We still dealt with the case. Monica emailed updates, and I signed one affidavit from Kyoto. But the trip was not ruined. It became proof that a crisis manufactured by my family did not automatically own our time. While we were away, North Star separated the disputed personal loan from Kayla's legitimate business debt. The furniture retailer closed the fraudulent account and removed it from my credit report. The original lender also discovered the broker had ignored inconsistent addresses and failed to complete required identity verification. Its insurer became involved. Kayla eventually admitted using my information in a written settlement interview. She claimed my parents encouraged her by saying I would never let the family lose the house. My mother admitted creating the email account. My father admitted knowing I had not signed in person. The prosecutor offered agreements based on repayment, cooperation, and no prior records. Kayla pleaded to identity theft and received probation, community service, mandatory financial counseling, and restitution. My mother entered a lesser plea related to the false electronic confirmation. My father was not criminally charged, but his written admission became part of a civil case. The personal loan was removed from my name. The retailer erased the furniture balance. My parents remained responsible for the business guarantee they had actually signed. They sold their house before foreclosure became possible, paid North Star from the equity, and moved into a smaller townhouse. They tell people I forced them to sell. The truth is that the guarantee forced the sale. My refusal simply stopped them from transferring part of the consequence to me. Kayla owes restitution through monthly payments. The first 3 arrived late. The court then added wage withholding, and payments became regular. I apply them to the $3,400 I spent on legal costs not covered by my plan, then to the old $4,000 loan. I do not communicate with her directly. My credit score recovered after the fraudulent accounts were deleted. Ben and I bought a small house 18 months later. We used the down payment account my father had treated like a public family resource. The first document we placed in our new safe was not the deed. It was the identity theft case file and a list of emergency passcodes. I am no contact with Kayla and very low contact with my parents. My mother has apologized for handling things badly, but still says she was trying to save both daughters. I told her saving Kayla by secretly sacrificing me was not saving both of us. The sale of my parents' house divided the extended family again. Some relatives claimed I should have contributed the honeymoon refund once the fraudulent portion was removed from my credit. They argued that I had achieved legal protection and could still have helped with the legitimate business balance. I reminded them that my parents had $186,000 in equity after paying the lender and moving costs. They were not homeless. They moved from a large suburban house into a 2-bedroom townhouse 15 minutes away. The disaster they predicted was actually a reduction in lifestyle and the loss of an asset they had risked voluntarily. None of the relatives criticizing me offered to refinance the debt in their own names. Once I noticed that, their moral certainty became easier to ignore. Kayla attempted reconciliation through a therapist assigned during probation. I agreed to receive a written letter. She apologized for using my information, but spent most of the letter explaining that our parents had always compared us and that my stability made her desperate. I sent a short response saying I accepted that she felt desperate, but desperation explained pressure, not forgery. I left future contact closed. My father once asked whether Japan had been worth losing the family. I told him the honeymoon was never the price. The price was my identity, my marriage's savings, and my agreement to lie. I refused to pay that price, so the truth collected from the people who created the debt instead. Ben keeps a photograph of his father as a child beside our wedding picture. When I look at it, I remember my mother dismissing the trip as memories instead of living people. She was wrong. The way we honor the dead shapes the lives we are building, and protecting that journey helped Ben and me begin our marriage as a team. If your family demanded that you cancel your honeymoon to pay your sister's debt, then you discovered they had used your identity to create part of that debt. Would you report them and take the trip? Or would you pay to protect your parents' home and keep the family secret?